Greetings, gardeners. Today, I'm inside. Why am I inside? Because I'd like to talk about indoor growing today. There's a lot of different reasons why a person might want to decide to set up facilities in their home for growing plants. If you live somewhere where the weather is really cold in the winter, and you want to get a jump on your vegetable and flower gardens, for instance, having an indoor growing facility that you can use to sprout seeds, do cuttings, and so on during the cold weather of the year in anticipation of spring coming, well, this is a great idea. When I lived in the upper Midwest, I had big tables set up in my basement with banks of fluorescent grow lights over the tops on timers, and I used to raise all my pepper seeds and my eggplants and my tomatoes and all that stuff. I'd get all the stuff going. It would then move from there into my greenhouse and from there later into cold frames before it hit the garden. But I'd get all of the seeds sprouted up, say like in February on eggplants and onions and stuff, with heater cables on tables and fluorescent grow lights over the top. Now, another reason you might want to go for indoor growing is because you don't have outdoor space. When working indoors and radiation's limited, things that are green and vegetative, things like parsley, basil, seedlings for plants and so on, things that are non-flowering are actually quite easy to do. There are lights that will allow you to do flowering indoors also. It's a little more sophisticated. That's another step up. But things that don't require flowering will grow just fine under the plant lights, whether they be LED or whether they be fluorescent. So, space. Weather. As far as weather is concerned, it is so much cheaper to set up a bank of lights in an odd corner of your house someplace than it is to build a greenhouse, for instance. It's just a whole lot more economical. Another reason that a person might want to go for indoor growing is because you might want to be controlling the day lengths over your crop. Now, for people who live in states where cannabis for recreation is legal, or where medical marijuana is legal, and you intend to be doing your own growing, well, the seed these days has become extraordinarily expensive. $10 to $25 a piece for these feminized seeds on the market. So if you're purchasing your seed, obviously you're spending $10 for a single seed. You're going to want to get the most out of that. And so the way you do that is you make cuttings of the original plant. We call it cloning. And so if your plant has gone beyond the vegetative stage where it's beginning to flower, that doesn't make cuttings well anymore. You want to be taking the cuttings off your plants when the plants are still juvenile. And so you can keep plants in an almost permanent juvenile state by running light that is about 16 to 18 hours a day over the plants. Once the light drops below 12 hours a day, the plants will automatically go into the blooming mode. And so then it's no longer any good for producing these clones. But if you're over 16 hours a day, upwards towards 18, you're going to find that the plants will continue in a juvenile vegetative state, and you can continue cutting, making more clones, cutting, making more clones. It's possible to turn one seed into 100 plants this way. Now, when the plants are removed from the long day length and moved to something closer to, say, 12 hours or less, then they will automatically begin to bloom. And so this way you can control the cycles, you see. Now, for cuttings or clones, again, you don't require a lot of radiation to do this, and so fluorescent lights or LED lights work just fine for this purpose. But you will have to have a timer, because it's rather important that the day lengths remain consistent. Now, I mean, you could turn the lights on and let them run 24 hours a day. It's a waste of electricity. It's a waste of the bulbs. And also, most plants will not use more than 18 hours light a day because they have to stop and respirate. And so running the lights longer than 18 hours is counterproductive. So you want to put a timer on it. So I'd say that those are the 3 main reasons why we want to do indoor growing. Climate, outdoor space limitations, and controlling day lengths artificially. Main reasons. Also, I guess the indoor environment is kinder and gentler. There is no rain in here, there's no wind in here, and so on. Although that can be deceptive because, boy, tell you what, if you get an aphid infestation or a mite infestation in an indoor space, it's horrendous by comparison to what could happen outdoors, where there's an environment that will keep things sort of in check. So, this sort of space station indoor growing can really have its disadvantages. It's kind of like a fart in the International Space Station. There ain't nowhere for it to go. So you watch for that. All right, well, with a little bit of the reasons why, over here next to me, I have erected another indoor growing facility myself. I've had these off and on for many, many years in many different locations. This is the first one I put up in Hawaii because our weather outdoors here is almost like a greenhouse anywhere else in the United States. I don't really need this kind of stuff. So obviously I am controlling day lengths here is what this is all about. So right here I have a standard 4-foot long fluorescent shop light. This is one of the T8 fluorescents. I have fitted it underneath here with agricultural lamps. So these are the 48-inch, 32-watt, they call them plant and aquarium lights. They give the full spectrum radiation is what that's all about. The plants need certain radiation frequencies in order to grow healthy. And so when we're growing plants or fish in aquariums or whatever, we use a specific light. They're fairly easy to get at building supply houses, hardware stores, and so on. It is possible. Also, this is a 4-way fixtures, 4 tubes in it. You can mix the plant lights with the daylight spectrum tubes. It seems to work, although all plant lights is probably a better thing. It's just a little cheaper if you use the daylight tube also, about half the price. Yeah, so, like I say, we got the fixture here. The fixture came with the 3-foot extension cord installed. I had to purchase the light tubes separately. There were no tubes in this fixture when I bought it. Came from Home Depot over here for what it's worth. You can go to Ace Hardware or electrical supply houses. Take your pick. Stuff's available all over. You do not need a specialty growing store. I'm not saying that you don't want to use these places because there are a lot of indoor growing businesses these days. But a lot of times you may find that it's a little bit cheaper at some of the larger box type construction stores or hardware stores to get these things because they have no special connotation on them when you go into a hardware store to get a plant light tube. Yeah, so shopping out a fixture. Now you can get these things in the classic large style fluorescent bulb. You can get them in the T8s. I couldn't find the classic style, so I went ahead and I went with the T8s. It's fine. It's just a narrower bulb. As far as I know, they work about the same. You can buy LED fixtures. The LED fixtures will sometimes be sold with lighting this for growth or for bloom too. Some of the LED fixtures have both combined, which is a pretty cool idea. I have myself not ever used any of the LED fixtures. I have some LED lights in my house and a few other spots around here, but for plants, I haven't used them. It's a little more modern than the Green Garden guy. So I understand they work just fine, and so if you prefer to use LEDs, I just happen to like the shape and size of these. They're 4 foot long. They're just the right for me. So you have to get yourself set up, though, like I said, so you have timers. I have a digital timer wired in here. It's running 17 hours a day at the moment. You will need to set up so that you can raise and lower the light fixture. And I mean, that can be, pulleys with parachute cords, or you can put chains on cranks. I used old shoelaces. Yeah, honest. And I tied them up in place with slip knots, and so I just pulled the knots and adjust it as I need to. So you can be as complicated or as funky and simple as you can imagine. You're also going to need some sort of a surface. And since plants are wet, you want to make the surface waterproof. We go through shower curtains here periodically, and I save all my old vinyl shower curtains just for these applications. They work really well. If not, you can go out and, get a sheet of plastic somewhere. They sell nice heavy-duty vinyl, usually at the hardware stores, stuff like that. But you're going to want some kind of a waterproof surface. A plastic table maybe works. In my case, I have recycled the parts of the kitchen cabinets that I gutted when I put in the new dishwasher. And so my tabletop is made out of the old kitchen cabinets. I just pulled all the staples out and screwed it all together here. It's screwed to the wall and back, so it's not going anywhere. Very stable. It's screwed to the wall in the corner, too. Like I said, I've covered it up here with the vinyl so it doesn't get all moldy and wet. I've just arranged all my pots of plants and seeds here underneath the lights. Here, let's take a little bit closer look at some of this. Right here, you can get a pretty good look at that table. And then if you take a look at the top of the lights, you'll see we have the chains that came with the lights going up, and then they suddenly go into shoelaces, which are tied to the rafters up above here. I've got slip knots in them, so I just pull the loose end if I want to adjust the light up or down. Very, very simple. In the past, I've used parachute cord with little pulley affairs and hooks. That's really pretty. That's overkill, frankly. These shoelaces work fine. Right here, I got my digital timer. She's set to on and off. Got a clock in it. That's what runs the whole show. There you can see the light color. Those are plant lights. So no big deal, as you can see. Shoelaces free, tabletop waste product, shower curtain, again, waste product. The timer has a value to it, but that puppy's been around for years. We used to use it in California when we'd go on vacation to run the lights. So it was just hanging around here. The only thing that I actually had to spend money on was the fixture and the tubes. That was it. At the worst case scenario, you'll have to find a table or buy some boards and make a table. You'll have to waterproof it. You may have to buy a timer. You might need an extension cord, etc., etc. It's pretty all minor stuff, though, compared to a lot of other growing facilities like a greenhouse or even like a cold frame. Cold frame, is a small greenhouse. Look in rather than walk in, and even those usually cost you a little bit more. Then, as a final word in regards to indoor growing, as I'd mentioned earlier, that when I used to raise seedlings in my basement in Wisconsin, that they would go from the basement under the lights into the greenhouse to be somewhat hardened off, and then they would go from the greenhouse into cold frames to get fully hardened off. Once they hit the cold frames, they'd not only experience much colder temperatures during the evenings than they did in the greenhouse, which toughens them up good, but they would also get full sunlight at times. But you have to break these things in easy. If you take a plant from under one of these grow lights and move it directly out in the sun, it's like a pale white tourist from Minnesota going on vacation in Mexico and laying out on the beach for 5 hours half naked. You get cooked. That's what happens to the plants. They're just not used to the radiation of our star when they're grown under these lights. And so you have to put them out there gradually. Worst case scenario, you use a piece of shade cloth or some shading lath or something, move them outdoors onto the porch where there's not too much wind, and kind of shade them a little bit for a few days as they gradually harden up. You have to do what's called hardening up if they go out. Now, in some cases, if you're raising, medicinal cannabis or whatever, they may not go outdoors at all. You may shift them from your cloning bank here to growing under some sort of a high output LED or high pressure sodium and halide lights, metal halide lights, where you have the radiation and energy usage of an arc welder in your closet. And so that in that case, you won't be doing any hardening off. You just shift them. But then you'll reset the timers on the lights. The other thing about indoor growing, as I mentioned before, boy, you get a bugaboo in here and it's a mess. And so you want to try to be real clean and careful. Don't go bringing stuff from your garden outside, run it in and put it under your lights, because chances are it's got bugs on it and they'll start spreading. And so you have to be really careful about keeping things clean. You also need air circulation. The plants require air to develop fiber. They also need air motion to keep from growing molds. And so if you're totally indoors and you're going to be growing there for a long period of time, you probably better put up some fans to get the air to move. Now, fluorescent lights don't normally put out too much heat. They're pretty cool. I mean, you can touch the bulbs, all right? So there's no issues there. But some types of lighting, like high pressure sodium, well, they're hotter than the dickens, and so you got to watch your distance. Now, with the fluorescent light, it's more like making sure the light is as close to the plant as possible. The light should be sitting almost on top of your plants. The closer the lights are, better the plant gets radiation, better it's going to grow. Of course, if it's really close, you're going to have to be raising the lights all the time, but it's the breaks, Yeah, so you need airflow. You need the lights close, but not too close. That's most of it. That should get anybody started who's never done this. And so if you've never done it, and you want to create a space station for growing inside your house, I highly recommend it. I mean, it's just cool. I have actually now never lived anywhere that I didn't have one of these set up someplace or another. So, happy gardening. All you up in the northern tier where you're freezing and there's snow, and in fact, if you're down in Dixie today and it's snowing too, hey, indoor growing. It'll keep you from going nuts. It's great for cabin fever. Hey, try it out. Aloha, happy gardening, and hang loose.